Welcome to episode 112, John Jacob Astor, From Immigrant to Richest Man in the United States. This is an outline of episode 112. There are 4 reasons why I studied John Jacob Astor. First, he was requested by my friend Richest. Second, he was the first global American billionaire. Third, he was the first immigrant billionaire. Fourth, he's the richest man in the United States in 1948 when he died. Just how rich was John Jacob Astor?
Number 14, John Jacob Astor, net worth $121 billion. Jacob was a fur merchant. His intelligent business strategies landed him the record of the first multi-millionaire in the United States. His fur clientele stretched out from the United States to China and Europe. From his tremendously successful fur empire, he veered into a real estate business in New York City.
Born in the tiny village of Waldorf, Germany in 1763,
His father was a butcher. He was uneducated and left Germany to England at the age of 16. His uncle owned a piano store in London.
was an ambitious young man who emigrated to America when he was only 20.
How Astor discovered the lucrative fur trade in America.
A fellow traveler had told Astor that a man could get rich in the fur trade business. So that was the business he decided to pursue. He came with little more than the clothes on his back and a dream of making a better life.
When Astor first arrived in New York, he spoke English with a very strong German accent. He was uneducated, I would say uncouth, but really dedicated to the idea of making a fortune.
In Astor's time, fur trading was a dangerous job. Traders traveled alone in uncharted wilderness. They went from one Indian tribe to another, offering cheap trinkets in exchange for animal pelts. Very quickly, young Astor would come to be known as a shrewd negotiator, though some say he used underhanded methods to get good deals.
In 1785, he married Sarah Cox Todd. He was 22 years old.
Astor then married a Todd, Sarah Todd.
And with the marriage came a handsome dowry in the amount of $300. John Jacob Astor would use the money to open a fur store. Wife Todd and husband John would work side by side on the fur store.
His corporate policy, if you will, was to ply the Indians with liquor, get them as drunk as possible, take their furs off them for next to nothing, of course, then sell them on the East Coast, and make a substantial profit doing it, of course.
Astor's company was based in New York, the hub of a very active fur trade.
Not long after John Jacob Astor arrived and settled in America, he became a Freemason of the prominent Holland Lodge No. 8 in New York City. He was a very active Freemason and held many key positions in secret lodge life. In 1788, he became the master of Lodge No. 8.
The market for furs was enormous in the early 19th century. They didn't have heaters. Fur robes are what kept them warm, fur coats, fur trim on their clothing. But the biggest demand for beaver pelt particularly were in top hats. Men's black top hats were made out of sheared beaver pelt, and they were worn by middle-class and wealthy men all over America.
Astor's business flourished, and by 1800, the Astor Fur Company was one of the most profitable in the country. But for a man as ambitious as Astor, this was just the beginning. His grand plan was to set up a network of trading posts around the world.
Astor was the first American businessman to think globally.
In 1811, Astor established Astoria, the first trading post west of the Rockies, located in what is now Oregon. From Astoria, Astor exported furs to the Far East. He sent ships loaded with pelts to China, and they returned filled with tea, exotic spices, and precious silks.
It was an enormously lucrative trade. A person could send a boatload of skins to China and pay for the ship, pay for the cargo, and have enough money nearly to retire on, just on one voyage.
Then he made a profit of $2 million from the war bonds in 1812.
Astor was raking in money when the United States declared war on England, setting off the War of 1812. The British quickly gained control of Astoria, putting a halt to Astor's Far East trading business. When the U.S. government made a $16 million bond offering to raise money to fight the British, Astor and two partners bought $10 million worth.
So by taking on some of the U.S. war debt during the War of 1812, sure, he's there to be a good citizen, but he's in it for the money.
Astor and his partners made money all right. They sold the war bonds for a profit estimated as high as $2 million.
Many trappers and traders came here hoping to get rich, and some succeeded. One even became the richest man in America. Here on the banks of the Missouri River, Astor's American Fur Company was soon open for business here at Fort Union. Over the next 4 decades, members of the Assiniboine, Crow, Blackfeet, and other tribes came to the post to trade with Astor's men. In a typical year, 25,000 buffalo hides and more than $100,000 in goods passed through the fort. A fortune in those days, and enough to help make John Jacob Astor America's first multimillionaire.
At home in New York City, Astor bought land in Manhattan and became New York City's largest landlord.
In the years following the war, Astor, who had a nose for making money, began seriously investing in Manhattan real estate. Buying land would prove so profitable that in 1834, 71-year-old Astor decided to sell his fur company and put everything into real estate.
When other people thought of New York, for example, as a prosperous village, he was thinking of New York as a major city, as the center of commerce in America, if not the Western world.
At the time, only the southern tip of Manhattan was developed. So Astor began buying large tracts of land between Greenwich Village and the Bronx.
He understands that if you get up there first and you buy up this now worthless farmland, then all you have to do is sit and wait. And he does. And lo and behold, the value of the land goes through the ceiling.
And as the value of his land rose, Astor didn't sell. Instead, he made a fortune leasing the land for higher rents.
And by the 1830s and 1840s, he's developed this perpetual money-making machine.
By 1838, Astor was one of the largest private landowners in the city, a position that gave him tremendous power.
There are thousands of people immigrating here. The population is doubling every 15 years. And who controls the rents? Who controls the property? It's Astor. He is a very powerful man.
Death, charity, and son.
When he died in 1848, at the age of 84, John Jacob Astor, the German immigrant who had arrived in America with nothing, was by far the richest man in the country. In his will, Astor did make one major philanthropic bequest. He left $400,000 to build the New York Public Library. But the bulk of his fortune went to his son, William Backhouse Astor. A chip off the old block, William, who came to be known as the landlord of New York, would double the Astor fortune in his lifetime.
What have I learned today? First, he's a mean, uncultured man. Second, he's the first American to build a global business empire by trading fur with China and Europe. Third, he's the first to see the potential of New York City as a financial center for the United States. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and leave your comments and questions below. My next video will be John Jacob Astor, 13 Lessons. Wishing everyone peace and prosperity.